Hit it yet? Remember that we have been talking about functions, and we started off at the beginning of the chapter. Oh, we had something like y equals 2x plus 1. And remember, we made the t-chart and we had x's and we plugged those in and we got what values for y. You plugged in some 0, 1, 2. For x, if you put in 0, what do you get? 1, right, 0, and then 0 plus 1 is 1. If I put in 1 there, 2 times 1 is 2 plus 1 more. And if I put in 2, that's 4, 4 plus, right. So we started with that. And then more recently, when we started talking about functions, well, it was basically the same thing, except we changed this y to a function of x. Because that's really what y is. It is a function of x. It depends on the x value. So it's nothing more than just different notation. Instead of y over here, we changed it to an f of x value. Well, today we're going to continue with this idea that this f of x thing is really like the y equals. It's the exact same thing. It's just a little bit different notation. And again today, they're going to ask you for the rate of change. Rate of change is nothing more than the slope of the line. How much does that line change? How much does this line change? This one doesn't change as fast as this one does. These two don't change as fast as this one does. So today they're going to ask you for rate of change, which is really nothing more than the slope. y2 minus y1, x2 minus x1. Except remember, when we're talking about functions, it's not x and y, it's x and f of x. So our formula, it's the same exact formula, except instead of y, it's f of x. So today they're going to ask you, find the equation of a linear function. Find the equation of a linear function Find the equation of a linear function if we know f of 4 equals f of 4 equals 1 and f of 8 equals 7. F of 4 equals 1, f of 8 equals 7. So we're supposed to find the equation for a linear function if f of 4 equals 1 and f of 8 equals 7. And the basic formula is this. We're going to use y equals mx plus b. Except, what do we use in place of the y? F of x. So our basic formula is going to be this. And remember, when we're writing an equation for a line, what values do you have to plug in there? We plug in the slope, and then we plug in the b. So if we're going to write the equation for a linear function, we need the slope and we need the b value. Well, the slope shouldn't be that that difficult to find, should it? The slope we have, and I don't know if you want to do this or not. I don't know if you want to label what's in here. These are the x values. And what's over here, that's the f of x value or the y value. It might be easier for you to label them with x's and y's because that's what you're familiar with, right? So inside the parentheses, those are the x, x1, x2. Outside the parenthesis on the other side, that's the y1, y2. So we're just going to plug it into so I have slope equals, what's y2? 7, take away 1, I heard someone say it. What's x2? Take away 4. So there we go. So what would my slope be then? 6 on top over, which is 3/2. I don't care if you leave it as 3/2 or if you want to write it as 1.5 or, I'm just going to leave it as 3/2. Is that what they got? It is. So I didn't screw up. I just want to make sure I didn't screw up. Marshall, you know how much I screw up. You too, Rodwell. You too, Avery. The rest don't know. Anyway, so we're part of the way there. We have the slope f of x equals 3/2 x plus b. Now we need to find that b value. We need to find the b value. Anybody with any ideas? We actually did this before. You have ordered pairs here. X, Y, X, Y, or X and f of x, because remember these are the f of x1. When you use the y, it's the same as f of x, right? When you use the y, it's the same as the f of x. So all we need to do, well, how about if you tell me what we need to do? I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to tell you we need to find b. You're going to tell me how to find it. How are we going to find b? Put my mask on.
Plug in f of x and x.
Into right here.
Yeah.
She says, take one of those x and f of x and plug them into this equation. If we know x and we know f of x, the only thing we don't know is the b value. And you can choose whichever one of these you want. You want to pick the top one or the bottom? Why did you pick the top? That's what I would pick too, because they're smaller values. So x is 4, and the f of x is 1. And by the way, when you're doing these, when you start the assignment, I think that it would be easiest for you to write it down just like I did right here. If you don't write down anything else, just at least write this down so that you can label them. That helps you keep things straight. That helps you keep things organized. So let's write our linear function. We need to find our b value. And I am going to choose the top one. The top one, the x value is 4, and the f of x value is 1. So we're going to plug those in. What was the f of x value? 1 equals 3/2 times x. What was the x value for that? 4. and then you're gonna get your undies in a bundle because you got a fraction there. That's okay. 2 goes in here once, 2 goes in there twice. So I get 1 equals, what is all of this? What does it equal? 3 times 2? 6. Plus b. So we're almost there. We just have to minus 6 minus 6. What do you get? So b is -5, and we have our slope. Write our linear function. Whoops, y equals mx plus b. I said whoops because that's not a function. It's got to be f of x equals mx plus b. But we know our m and we know our b. Plug those in. F of x equals, what's our m? 3/2 x. And then the b value, -5. So this right here, that would be our equation for a linear function. Does that make sense? It's almost, we did these before, except we had x and y, and it said find the equation of a line. I think if I remember right, it said find the equation of a line in useless standard form. But now at least we can just leave it like this in slope intercepts. Right? Does that make sense? Does that make sense? And by the way, for the first bunch, look at the written exercises. Oh my gosh. Number 1 on the written exercises. They tell you, what do they tell you? The slope is 2 and the b is 3. Watch, that one's going to be really hard. What do they tell you? The slope is what again? Slope is 2. And the intercept is 3. If I do f of x equals mx plus b, hopefully no one gets this wrong. We have to plug in the m and we have to plug in the b. Guess what? They gave it to us. You just have to plug it in. Won't even take any work. Even for the people that are texting when I'm talking, we should be able to get it. 2x plus 3, there you go. That's your, oops, my brain and my hand are not connected. Woo! I told you I said 3, right? And I wrote B. My brain and my mouth are not connected sometimes. Sometimes I have to talk with my foot in my mouth. So those you just plug it in, right? They give you the slope and they give you the intercept. Not any work to do. But down here, when they give you the points, that's when you have to figure out the slope and then plug in one of these points to figure out the b. But it's really not that difficult. I don't think we did it before, just with x's and y's. Now we're doing the same thing with x's and f of x's. Make sense? Perfectly clear? Clear as mud? Should I do another one or do you think you have it? I think you have it. Do you have questions? Are there any questions? Does anyone have a question? Does anyone have a question? I don't think they have questions. So I have an assignment for you. Would that be page 149 and 150? Whew. Let's go 1 to 22, 1 to 21, the odds. Page 149 and 150. WE 1 to 21, we'll just go odd.